Anyway, we are joined today with the California Food Safety, I believe it is, Department of, I'm sorry,
Yeah, Department of Food and Ag Produce Safety
the Food
Program.
and Ag, yes.
Long acronym.
And you should be here for the California Food Safety Survey. So that's what we will be covering today. Remind everybody, please mute yourself. Do pay really close attention to this because this does get handled differently than our normal surveys. And there has been a few changes from last year, so we're going to want to really pay attention to that. But we will have this video to go back and reference to. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to y'all, and it is your show.
All right. Thank you, Gene. Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. If we have any East Coasters, good, very early afternoon. Um, I know a lot of you know me. My name is Benjamin Taylor. I'm a supervisor with the CDFA Produce Safety Program. So I'll introduce the other folks with our team and then do a brief introduction of our program and then pass it over to Ben Reishi for the bulk of the training. So Geetika is with us this morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Geetika Joshi. I'm the program manager with the CDFA's Produce Safety Program. I feel like I've met many of you in the past, maybe a couple years ago when we first started this project. Really grateful for everybody who's able to join and participate in this project as well as join us for this meeting today. I'll be here till about 9:30 or so, and then I have to jump off for a different meeting. And in the meantime, if any questions come up or anything for me, I'd be happy to address. And with that, I will pass it off to Ben in our team.
Thank you, Geetika. Yeah, I'm Ben Reishi. I'm the inventory and inspection data lead. This is my second year working on this farm verification project, and I've met a lot of you in our office hours. I'll be conducting those office hours again this year, and I hope to see you all there.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Geetika. Um, okay, so for starters, we don't have time for introductions of everyone on the call. It's quite a big call. But if you could put your name in the chat and then maybe where you're from, which state, and how many years you've participated in the project. So I know we've been going, I think this is our third year, and I see a lot of familiar faces. So yeah, go ahead and put a 0, 1, or a 2, depending how many times you've participated. Um, and then, yeah, for the veterans, as Gene mentioned, it's largely the same. It's still the same rule. We're still doing the same evaluation. But we have streamlined some things a little bit. The number of questions has gone down a little bit. We've combined a few questions. So do keep your eyes peeled for those changes as we go through the training. Okay, so I'm going to have Ben R. We have a lot of Bens on here. Share the PowerPoint presentation and just give a little background about the project for those who are new. So this is the long name of the project, CDFA Produce Farm Inventory Verification Project. So our program conducts food safety related inspections on farms that are covered under the Produce Safety Rule. So the Produce Safety Rule is part of a much larger piece of regulation called the Food Safety Modernization Act, which actually consists of 7 different rules covering a very broad range of things from production, processing, produce, animal food. It's a very broad set of regulation. Imports. The specific one our program is concerned with is the Produce Safety Rule, which specifically covers growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of fresh produce for human consumption. So our focus is a little narrower than FSMA as a whole. The aim is to prevent human illness caused by microorganisms. So we evaluate microbiological hazards. This rule doesn't focus on chemical or physical hazards, generally speaking. And then we conduct these inspections. We have a small but mighty team of inspectors that go throughout the state of California, ensuring farmers are complying with this regulation. Next slide. So the enumerators will be evaluating or gathering information on the farms relating to basically whether they're covered under this rule or not. That is, whether we need to inspect them or not. So you won't need a great deal of detail about what an inspection consists of, but just so you have a little taste of what this means, the produce safety rule sets standards for farm activities. So it addresses a lot of different aspects of produce production, things like worker training and hygienic practices, hand washing, glove use, availability of restrooms, and standards for those facilities. Ag water. So there's parts of the regulation that touch on irrigation water, water used in post-harvest for washing produce, etc. Soil amendments, specifically those that contain ingredients of animal origin, that can be a source of contamination. So there's standards on how those must be handled and applied, timing. Animals, whether they're working domestic animals, which is not super common anymore, but working domestic animals, wild animals, pets, animals from threats from or risks posed by animals on adjacent land. And then most sections of the rule have a component of record keeping, whether it's a log, a record that training occurred, that cleaning occurred, water testing, etc. So that's just a little background. You may get questions from farmers. In general, you can refer them to speak to the inspector when they hear from them. But that's just a little background of what our inspections consist of. So I will pass it off to Ben to describe the scope of the project.
All right, thank you, Benjamin. So the scope of our project is all of the produce farms within California.
I apologize.
Go ahead, Geetika.
I missed Geetika's hand.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. And Benjamin, I just wanted to chime in real quick because I was just looking at our chat box where everybody put in their intros, and there are so many new faces and so many folks doing this for the first time. It's really exciting. I wanted to just take a moment to just welcome all the new folks. Of course, all of the seasoned folks who know this in and out already. And just I can't emphasize enough how valuable this partnership has been with USDA and through the NAS and NASDA enumerators for our program. You see this in the slide right now. Ben's going to tell you more. We have so many fresh produce farms in California that being able to verify every single one of these farms and then inspect them is a big, big lift. It's a huge component of public health protection in our state, and it wouldn't be possible to do without all of your collaboration and support. So just please know how much we value this partnership. It's taken a little bit of time getting the project on-ramped this year. Some of it was in none of our control with the shutdown and everything that the delays were. And we are just so excited that we are getting started on this project. We will talk a lot more about the timeline and the exact scope. Ben has spent a lot of time also listening to your feedback from last year. Those of you who've done it before, especially when he was running those office hours at the weekly level. So you'll see the changes and modifications that we've made, hopefully help streamline it. But I just couldn't help myself. There's so many new faces. We are so glad to have you on. Thank you so much again. And we're going to get into more of the details now. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Geetika. It is a big lift, and we could not do it without you folks from NASA. So as Geetika said, there are 22,000 produce farms in California. 11,000 of them are growing covered produce. We've verified 4,000 of them through the efforts of this project and through the produce safety program inspectors. That leaves about 8,000 farms still to be verified. Hopefully we'll be able to get through a big chunk of those this year. One of the big changes to this project is we're trying to cut down the amount of time that each call takes with the farm. We've streamlined the questionnaire. Previously, the reports were that it was taking about half an hour or more to finish that phone call. We've consolidated the questions in the questionnaire, and we're hopefully going to cut 10 to 15 minutes off of that call. That should allow us to get more questionnaires filled out and make contact with more farms. All right, the enumerator resources that we will have on a SharePoint folder that all of the enumerators will have access to will be our instruction sheet, the FDA covered farm decision tree, a call script that you'll be able to follow to help guide you through your calls with farms, a sheet that explains the exemptions and non-covered farms. You'll also have access to your personal farm lists and your personal do not call lists. We have a PDF version of last year's frequently asked questions. We will start a new file for this year, and that will be updated in real time. Those questions will come from your questions in our office hours that we'll hold weekly. Those office hours historically were on Fridays, and I think we'll probably keep them that same day. We'll also have access to this recording of the training. There will also be a PDF version of all of the slide deck with all of the answers and notes. I am going to attempt to go over to my other screen to show you what these resources look like so that when you go there, it's not the first time you've seen them. All right, this is our, did it switch over for me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So this is the folder that all the enumerators will have access to that has all of our enumerator resources. When you click on farm lists, there will be a list for every enumerator. You'll only have access to your folder. Same thing goes for the do not call list. This is a list that will be updated weekly, that will cover farms that we have internally made contact with within that week. And so you don't need to call them anymore because we've already made contact. Here is the instruction sheet. It has all of the instructions on how to fill out the questionnaire. It has the links to the questionnaire and to the enumerator resources. Here is the FDA decision tree. This is a good resource to just go over quickly to remind yourself, how we're going about verifying coverage by the produce safety rule. Here's the call script. We're going to go over this in detail later, but it's something you'll read verbatim, and at least at the beginning, and then you'll be able to develop your own. Here's our description of the exemptions to the produce safety rule. We will go over them in detail later as well. And then the frequently asked questions. All right, so to determine a farm's covered status, there's really 4 different steps we need to go through. First, we need to know, does the farm grow, harvest, pack, or hold covered produce or produce in general? Second, is that produce covered produce? Then we need to figure out how large the farm is. This is based on their gross sales, averaged over 3 years. We'll go into detail on that later. And then finally, does the farm qualify for an exemption from the produce safety rule, or are all of their commodities under enforcement discretion? So a produce farm can fall into these 4 buckets. They're either a covered farm, a non-covered produce farm, they have an exemption, so they're an exempt farm, or they are a covered farm, but all of their commodities are under enforcement discretion. So a covered farm is based on, the size of the farm and the commodities produced. Non-covered farms are farms that are, rarely producing rarely consumed raw produce or non-produce commodities. The exempt farms are the very small micro farms, ones that all of their produce are processed with commercial processing, or they have a qualified exemption. And we'll go over all of those exemptions in detail. So non-covered commodities. So non-covered commodities are all of our non-produce commodities, milk, eggs, grains. But there's also a list in the regulation of rarely consumed raw produce commodities. This is an exhaustive list that the FDA has determined that these produce are not usually eaten raw, and they're either cooked or processed before they're eaten. Figs, our picture here, is one of the produce on that list. The full list is on the questionnaire and in the call script. We'll be going over every single one of those commodities with the farmer to see if they're producing them, because if that's all they produce, then they are not a covered farm. The next step we need to do is determine the size of the farm. The size of the farm is determined by the average last 3 years of gross sales of their produce. That's not profit. A lot of farms will make contact with that, their commodity prices are down or something, and they'll say, well, I didn't make a profit, so I shouldn't be covered. Well, it's not whether you made a profit or not. It's based on your gross sales. And again, that gross sales is averaged on the last 3 years. This gross sales is based on all produce. That includes the rarely consumed raw produce and commodities that are under enforcement discretion. You do get to exclude your non-produce commodities, such as milk, eggs, meat, and grains, and also commodities that are not grown for human consumption. So you can have things that are grown specifically for animal feed, such as corn. It is a rarely consumed raw commodity, but if it's grown for animal feed, it's not included in your calculation. So we have 4 different size categories for farms. We have micro farms. That's farms making gross sales of less than $33,927 a year. Those micro farms get an exemption and are not subject to inspection. Then we have the very small farms, which is, greater than 33,927, up to $250,000 a year. And then small farms greater than $250,000 a year, up to 665,947 a year. And then we have large farms that are greater than that, $665,947 per year. So that's all that we need to ask the farm is, do you fall into this category? We don't need to know their exact sales, just which category do they fit into. So we're going to move on to our PSR exemptions. The first exemption is those micro farms. That's a farm that sells less than $33,927 in produce. We'll have a lot of these farms. Some farms will be micro farms because they are orchards that have been put into production or have not been put into production yet. They're still young orchards. They have not sold any produce yet, but they will eventually become covered farms because their gross sales will increase. The second exemption is commercial processing. Commercial processing is processing with a kill step that reduces the number of microorganisms that present risk to human health. And the last exemption is qualified exemption. These are small and very small farms that are selling mostly to consumers or retailers. So,
Hey Ben, did you want to hold questions to the end or?
I think if they come up, I'm not monitoring the chat, so if you want to.
I had a question to clarify
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
the micro farms.
Yeah.
If they made, say, 35,000 in gross sales last year, but the previous 2 years they were like 10,000. Are you wanting the average over the 3 years or just what the gross sales were last year?
Correct. Average over the last 3 years. So your example farm would not be covered. They would have that micro exemption. Well, they are a covered farm, but they have an exemption from inspection. So if they continue to have that 35,000 for the next 2 years, then they would become a very small farm, and then they would be subject to inspection.
Gotcha.
So commercial processing with the kill step. This is a very specific thing. There's a lot of misconceptions that dehydrating or drying of nuts or using chlorine solution is a kill step, but it's not a scientific validated method. Any kill step that's used has to be a scientifically validated method, and that process must reduce the risk to human health by microorganisms. A good example of that is a farm that only grows tomatoes for processing, because they'll go to, like in this picture, a big tomato processing plant and be canned to be shelf stable and reduce that microorganisms that risk human health. If they are being commercially processed, all of the unprocessed produce needs to be accompanied by a document disclosing that it is not processed, and it needs this exact language on it. If their produce is not accompanied by this document, then they would be subject to inspection. It's not critical that you as enumerators verify this, but we would like you to let the farms that you make contact with that are claiming this commercial processing kill step, that they will most likely be contacted by a CDFA produce safety inspector to verify this information. The next exemption is a big one. We'll see a lot of farms claiming that they are qualified exempt. Qualified exemption only applies to our small and very small farms. That is the farms making under $665,947 in gross sales per year. They have to maintain documents demonstrating their verification of eligibility, that their gross sales are less than that amount. So they have to be one of those small and very small farms, but also 50% of their food produced has to be sold directly to qualified end users. And this is all food, not just their produce. So this would include things like dairy and meat and eggs. And so the qualified end users are either the consumer of the food, a restaurant or retail food establishment. Retail food establishments are places like grocery stores, restaurants, community supported agriculture, also certified farmers markets. Yeah, the list is fairly exhaustive. This could also be a qualified end user, could be online sales if they're shipping directly to the consumer. And then finally, we have our commodities that are under enforcement discretion. These commodities have been determined by the FDA to be low risk, so they have exercised enforcement discretion. There are 4 commodities that have this enforcement discretion. If farms are growing only these commodities, they will be considered a covered farm, but will not be subject to inspection. And those commodities are almonds, wine grapes, not to be confused with table grapes or raisin grapes, hops, and then pulse crops, which is all of your dried beans and legumes. So dried peas, kidney beans, those sorts of things. So we're going to go through 9 examples of answers that farms will give us. And I'll ask that you guys drop your answers, what you think, if the farm is covered or not covered or exempt. So drop your answers in the chat, please. So first example, a farmer states he grows and harvests sweet corn and beets. His sales of produce are roughly $2 million per year. Is this farm covered, not covered? Also, what size would the farm be?
I'm not sure if you're watching it. You're getting
Yep.
answers in the
Yep.
chat popping
Okay,
up.
I'm seeing that. A lot of people are saying covered large farm, and this is a non-covered farm because all of his produce is rarely consumed raw, and that uh, I imagine a lot of you would have gotten that if we would go over the entire list of commodities that are rarely consumed raw. So I'll go ahead and pull that up now. All right, here is our list of rarely consumed raw uh, commodities. They are asparagus, beans, beets, which is what our farmer stated that he was growing, cashews, sour cherries, chickpeas, cocoa beans, coffee beans. I don't think either of those are grown in California, but they are on the list of rarely consumed raw. Collards, sweet corn, the other commodity that our farm has stated that they're producing. Cranberries, dates, dill, seed, and weed, eggplant, figs. Figs is a funny one because I know a lot of us will eat raw figs, but they somehow made it on the list of rarely consumed raw commodities, so they are not a covered commodity. Ginger, hazelnuts, horseradish, lentils, okra, peanuts, pecans, peppermint, potatoes, winter squash and pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and water chestnuts. And that is the full list of commodities that are rarely consumed raw or considered rarely consumed raw by the produce safety rule and would constitute a non-covered farm if that's all they're producing. So we'll go back to our presentation. But it looks like everybody was correct on that they would be considered a large farm. We'll go to our next example. A farmer grows lettuce, asparagus, and almonds. Her produce sales were about $250,000, averaged over the last 3 years. Do we think that this is a covered farm, not covered farm, or exempt farm? All right, looks like a lot of people are saying that it's a covered farm. It is a covered farm. Lettuce is a covered commodity. Asparagus is one of those rarely consumed raw commodities. and almonds are under enforcement discretion, but we do take those and incorporate them into the gross sales for the farm size. And the farm size of $250,000 would make us a small farm. Looks like most everybody got that, which is great. All right, example 3. A farmer grows tomatoes for canning as well as pistachios that will be dried. Produce sales are greater than $1 million per year. Is this a covered farm, not covered farm, or exempt farm? Looks like a lot of people are coming up with they are covered. I'm seeing a few not covered. This is a covered farm. Pistachios are covered produce. And drying of the pistachios is not considered a kill step. Pistachios would need to go through a pasteurization process that would be a kill step. The act of drying the pistachio to make it the correct moisture content for storage is not a kill step. And it looks like everybody was able to get that more than $1 million per year is a large farm. Example 4. A farmer grows and harvests broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. They sell 75% of their produce at a farmer's market. Their total food sales average $500,000 per year. Is this a covered farm, not covered farm, or exempt farm? Looks like a lot of our answers are small covered farm. We have some exempt farms. This farm is qualified exempt. Because their produce sales are greater than 50% to qualified end user at a farmer's market, and their sales are under that 600 and so $1,000 mark to become a large farm. Since they are a small farm still, they can claim the qualified exemption. Again, they need to maintain documentation to prove that they are not a large farm and that their sales are greater than 50% to qualified end user. All right, example 5. A farmer grows hay, alfalfa, and potatoes. Sales are greater than 400,000 per year. Is this a qualified exempt, covered, or not covered farm? Also, if you could put in the chat what the reason for not being covered. Is it qualified exempt? Or is everything go through a kill step? Is everything under enforcement discretion, or are all the commodities rarely consumed raw? All right, looks like we've got a few not consumed raw. And that's correct. This is a not covered farm because they are not producing any raw consumed produce. All of their produce is rarely consumed raw. I'd like to say you guys are doing excellent at this. All right, example 6. A farmer grows strawberries and sells all the fruit to a cooler. This year's sales were $60,000. The last 2 years' sales were less than $10,000 due to heavy rain. Is this a covered, not covered, exempt, or exempt farm? And if they are not covered or exempt, please give us an idea of what you think that exemption or reason for not being covered is. Looks like everybody is getting it. They have the micro farm exemption because their average sales over the last 3 years was less than that $33,927. All right, example 7. An avocado farmer sells all his crop to a packing house. The crop is worth greater than $1 million per year. He states the full crop is processed through a chlorine solution, and he already does a gap audit, so he is exempt. Is this a covered farm, not covered farm, or exempt farm? All right, we're getting some mixed answers here. We're getting some not covered, some exempt, some covered. This is a tough one. I'll give it a couple more seconds for people to get their answers in. All right. This is a covered farm. Avocados are a covered produce. They have sales greater than $1 million, so they're a large farm. A chlorine solution is not a kill step that is scientifically validated to reduce the microorganism load to reduce the risk to human health. Those processes have to be something like pasteurization or canning, and they need to be able to demonstrate that process reduces that microorganism load. Also, that they are claiming that they're exempt because they do gap audits. You might hear this every once in a while because they go through these gap audits that are very intense. They think that they've covered everything in the produce safety rule, but those gap audits are not equivalent to the PSR inspection, and they would still be subject to the inspection. this is a really tough question. You'll also get people that like the example with pistachios, also walnut growers, um, uh, prunes. They'll uh, they'll say that my produce is dried or dehydrated, and so that's a kill step, but those are not scientifically validated kill steps. Dehydration is not considered a kill step unless they have the documentation or the assertion from the processor that they've scientifically validated that kill step. All right, example 8. An organic celery farmer sells all her $250,000 crop to a cooler. She states she does not use pesticides because it's an organic farm and workers are trained on food safety. Before we go into the answer here, we do have a question. Do we have a list of kill processes that are approved scientifically? And we do not, unfortunately, have a list of those. It's not really within the scope of our inspection to be able to determine whether a kill step process is an adequate kill step. It's on the farmer or the processor to prove that that kill step is adequate. So also, when they're claiming a kill step, we need to reiterate that produce safety rule, produce safety program inspector will likely be reaching out to them to verify their processing exemption. All right, back to example 8. Looks like we have most everybody's small covered farm. This is a covered farm. Celery is covered produce. Because they're at right at $250,000 per year, they are still considered a very small farm because their gross sales need to be over $250,000 a year. But it looks like everybody got that was covered farm, and that is really what's important. So great job. All right, example 9. A farmer grows squash that are sold to an insectary for raising beneficial insects, as well as ornamental flowers. Sales are approximately $100,000 per year. Is this a covered, not covered, or exempt farm? Looks like everybody's saying that it is an exempt farm. Technically, it's a not covered farm. The distinction there is not super important. Everybody's got it correct that they would not be subject to a produce safety rule inspection. But because their food is not for human consumption, that means they are not a covered produce farm. So that the distinction is they're not covered by the produce safety rule at all. So the regulations don't actually cover them. The exempt farms, the regulations do cover them, but they are exempt from inspection. That's the big distinction between the two. But for the scope of this survey, it's not important that everybody caught that they were not covered or exempt is adequate, and good job, everybody. That could be a really difficult question. So that is the end of all of the examples. Does anybody have any questions about them? Anything they'd like to go back and discuss? You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself. I'll leave the open for just a minute, and if I don't hear anything, we'll go ahead and move on. Yeah, the question in the chat is, can I go over the exempt versus not covered again? Let me see if I can get back to that slide where we have the buckets. So going back to this, there's the 4 different buckets that a farm can fall into. They can either be a covered farm, that is, small, very small, and large farms growing covered produce. They can be a non-covered farm that only grows rarely consumed raw commodities. I also forgot to cover this. They also, all of their produce is for personal consumption or being consumed on the farm. They are not a covered farm because they're not selling produce. Or they only are growing grains or raising cattle or something. They're not producing any produce commodities that are normally consumed raw. So that is a non-covered farm. Rarely consumed raw commodities or non-produce commodities. The exempt farms are farms that are covered by the produce safety rule, but have been granted an exemption from being inspected by the produce safety program. So they are subject to all of the regulations of the produce safety rule. They just are not required to have an inspection. Those exempt farms are those ones that are going, all of their produce is going through a commercial kill step, such as canning, pasteurization. If they can prove that the dehydration method that they use reduces the microorganism load, and it's a scientifically validated process, they can claim that exemption. Again, if they do claim that exemption, produce safety program inspector will be reaching out to them to confirm that exemption. There's also the qualified exemption of greater than 50% of their sales directly to the qualified end user, such as certified farmers market or community supported agriculture, or even to directly to restaurants or to grocery stores. That exemption is only extended to small and very small farms. If they have enough sales to be a large farm, they no longer qualify for that qualified exemption. The last exemption is those micro farms that have sales less than 33,000. And then again, we have the enforcement discretion, the last bucket, the enforcement discretion commodities, that is almonds, wine grapes, hops, and then the pulse crops, which is dried beans and legumes. We have another question. What about sunflowers or pumpkin seed? Anything that sunflowers, I don't know that that's considered produce. Maybe Benjamin could hop in and answer that one. But pumpkin seed would be on the rarely consumed raw commodity list under pumpkins.
Let me get back to the chat on the sunflowers.
Thank you, Benjamin. Do we have any other questions? All right. So now that we've gone through those practice, I will switch over and we'll go over our data entry form. We'll go over the call script, and then we'll go over the actual questions to clarify any questions that come up. I saw another question come in. Are walnuts a covered crop? Yes, walnuts are a covered crop. Some walnuts go through a pasteurization kill step, but not all of them do. So that comes to the farmer to find out from their processor if all of their produce is treated with a kill step, and then if their processor says that they do pasteurize all of their produce, they can claim the processing exemption. But then again, if they do claim that processing exemption, they need to have that documentation that travels with the produce declaring that it is not processed. All right. Here is our questionnaire for data entry. When you go to do your data entry, it's not going to look exactly like this. It will look more similar like this. It'll be a website with the California Department of Food and Agriculture header, and then it'll be set in this. This is our questionnaire that our farmers answered directly, but the questionnaire we're going to use for this project will look very similar. So the first things you'll do is enter your enumerator number, and then every farm that will be on your list will have a farm unique ID. You'll put that in here. The format is a single digit, an underscore, 2 digits, underscore, 4 digits, underscore, 3 digits. So that first digit is the region of California that farm resides in. There's 5 different regions within California, starting in region 1 in Northern California, ending with region 5 in Southern California. Those next 2 digits are the county code, starting at 1 with our first county in the alphabet, which would be, what is the first county? Alpine, maybe? And then going all the way, there's 58 counties in California. So it'll be 0, 1 through 58. And then the next 4 digits are part of the address of the farm, and then those last 3 digits it starts at 001, and then if those first 4 or the rest of the unique ID is used by another farm, then it'll go 002, 003. You'll see a lot of farms that are under like a management company. So there will be a lot of the same first digits, and then this will, 00 could go to, 15 or 18. Then we'll collect contact information, business name, the official legal business name, contact name. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to the person most responsible for food safety. We'll record what their role is. Some of our farms, English will not be their preferred communication language, so we'll ask them if they prefer a different language. This is some of the languages we may encounter, but there are many languages spoken in California, so we'll record the other ones. We'll collect mailing address. If they do have a different physical address from their mailing address, go ahead and record that in the notes section down at the bottom. And then we'll go into the questions directly about their covered status of the farm. First, we'll ask do they actually have covered activities. We'll actually go through this here. We'll go ahead and do a test entry so we can see exactly what it'll look like. Okay, so we'll say, does the company grow, harvest, pack, hold produce? They'll answer yes, no, or unknown. If they answer yes, that'll get us to our next set of questions. If they answer no, then it'll bring us to another question. What is the reason that they don't grow, harvest, pack, or hold produce? Because our list should only be farms that are performing one of those functions. So we may have, the wrong information. So it could not be a farm. They could be a non-produce farm. So they're only growing, say rice or they're a cattle ranch or something. Or the farm's no longer in operation. Either they've sold it or they've shut it down, or they may have another reason. And then when we answer this one, then it'll ask if they have different businesses, and notes, it'll go to the bottom. So we'll answer yes. So we'll record which activities they are performing on their farm. So we'll say we're growing, harvesting. Those will be our two most common, but we will run into farms that pack and hold. Then we'll ask them first, are they growing any of those enforcement discretion commodities? We'll say, yeah, we've got, a couple acres of wine grapes on the farm. And then we'll go through this exhaustive list of rarely consumed raw commodities. So yeah, we grow a little sweet corn. We have some winter squash too. And then we'll ask them, what other commodities do you produce? And if we've exhausted their list of commodities that they produce, then we'll go ahead and move on to, because they'll be a not covered farm, or in this case, if this was the only things that we were producing on our farm, we would say the exemption is enforcement discretion exemption, and we'll enter that at the bottom of the form. So for this case, we'll say, oh yeah, we grow cucumbers, some peppers, and some root vegetables. We got a few fruit trees. And then we'll ask them, all right, so we'll have reached over the last 3 years. I'm gonna go over the ranges of gross sales that your farm has made, averaged over the last 3 years, and tell me which category your farm falls into. And then here's we have the brackets of the categories of farms, so you can read those off to them, and then we'll choose which size. If they are a covered farm, then we'll go to qualify it. We'll go to the exemptions. If they're a micro farm, it'll jump straight past all of those questions because they have the exemption. If they're a large farm, it'll jump past the qualified exemption because they don't qualify for that. So we'll go to a very small farm. Again, are more than 50% of your food sales direct to consumer? We'll say yes. And then we'll ask, do you maintain records demonstrating that you have continued eligibility for that? Either they say yes, no, unsure. And then we'll move on to, if they say yes, then we don't even need to go on to the processing exemption. They'll have that qualified exemption. If they say no, then we can go on to the processing exemption. Then this is the one. It looks like we have some questions in the chat about kill steps again, which is probably the most. Oh, thank you for that, Amy. Well, I'll fix that. This is definitely the most complicated part of the whole questionnaire. Do you have a processing exemption? Because those kill steps need to be that scientifically validated, and they have to be able to attest to that. A lot of farms will get a letter from their producer saying that all of their produce is either canned or pasteurized. And then if they are claiming that processing exemption, we'll ask if they disclose in documents that go with that produce that the produce is not processed to reduce those microorganisms. And then here in question 26, this is where we will record the exemption, or if they don't have any exemption, we'll select none, which will will put us into our next set of questions. If we do take an exemption, it'll go straight to the tribal lands question, which we'll get to a little later. So if they do not have an exemption, which means they're a covered farm, then we'll go on to explain to them what an on-farm readiness review is, and ask them if they're interested in that. An on-farm readiness review is a program where we come out to the farm that is non-regulatory. It's not an inspection. It's coming on the farm to discuss their food safety program with them and help get them ready for an inspection. So they'll either say yes, no, or they'll say, oh no, I've already been inspected, so they're not eligible for that. And then the produce safety rule also requires that somebody on the farm has gone through the Produce Safety Alliance grower training course or an equivalent. So we'll ask them, has an employee done that? And then on to tribal lands. We'll ask them if any of the produce is produced on tribal lands. This is specifically because the produce safety program does not have jurisdiction on tribal lands, and we don't handle those inspections. Then we'll ask the demographic question. This is required by CDFA to be asked. We only ask this question if you're speaking to the farm owner. If you're speaking to the food safety manager or an employee of some sort, we don't need to ask this question. And then we'll ask them if they have any other businesses that are affiliated with this farm that are also doing any of those activities with produce. And then what are those? And then we'll get record any notes. And then we'll go on to the enumerator assessment. If at any time the person that you're talking to is hostile, makes threats, refuses to cooperate. If they might be a threat to one of our inspectors, please answer yes for the personal safety alert so that we'll be aware and be prepared when we reach out to them again. If they refuse to answer any of the questionnaire, we'll go ahead and mark yes for a refusal. And then we ask that we make at the very least 15 attempts to contact a farm. And if after those 15 attempts, you're not able to reach the farm, we'll go ahead and say, yes, I've made 15 attempts. A lot of the farms that you won't be able to make contact with will be because we don't have good number or it's the wrong number. So we'll select whichever reason that is. And then we'll use this. Is this an initial or a correction, additional, or did you have any additional information? We'll use this just in case you've already made an entry for that farm, but then maybe they call you back and they're like, oh yeah, I reviewed my records, and actually, we are a large farm, so we're not able to have that qualified exemption. Or they'll call you back and be like, oh, we reviewed our records and we actually made just under that amount of a large farm for that qualified exemption or something like that. Or it could be something as simple as I gave you the wrong phone number or wrong address or something. And then keep track of how much time you're spending on each of these for each entry. Then enter that here, and then let us know how many times it took you to get in touch with that farm. And then these should be rare since we've done a lot of work to clean up our unique IDs, but we may still find some farms that have more than one unique ID. It could be because they farm in 2 different counties, or they're using an address for another farm somewhere else. They have 2 yards or something, and they use both of those addresses or something like that. We shouldn't run into any farms that have multiple farms with the same unique ID, but if you do, please mark that, or if you see it's something else. Once we've finished all of those, we'll go ahead and submit it, and it'll come through. Let's see. Finish all these up. And we'll submit, and then you'll get this, your response if it's submitted. And then if you have another farm that you've talked to that you'd like to submit, is click on submit another response, and it'll bring you back to the beginning of the form. Do we have any questions about the form or data entry?
I have this is Gene here. I have a few questions in chat. Not sure where we had left off, but I'll start with the ones I see here. When will the material be uploaded to the website? My understanding is y'all already have it out on a SharePoint site. And so what we're going to do on the Mountain West region site is create a link over to that SharePoint site.
Okay. Yeah, I could also, if that site is easy for the enumerators to access, I could also provide you with those resources and you can put them there.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to Dev, figure out which way is going to be the simplest. And
Yeah, I'll still need to provide access to the farm lists and do not call lists because those will need to stay on our server. But
okay. All right. Um, see if I can get down to the next one.
let's see, walnut cover
What
crop weed.
what is the survey period? Is it mandatory? And then there was a follow-up question of how many assignments per enumerator, and that one I'll address. But what is the survey period and is it mandatory?
Okay, the survey is not necessarily mandatory, but if they are uh, producing covered produce and they're covered by the produce safety rule, inspection is mandatory. There's nothing we can do to them if they refuse to answer your questions. So you'll just put it in as a refusal, and that'll flag it for us to have one of our inspectors contact that farm again. So yeah, again, there's no, it's not mandatory that they answer your questions, but the inspection, if they are a covered farm, is mandatory.
Okay. So for the enumerators, for our purposes, we will just say this is not mandatory and we will let it go at that.
Correct. Yeah, and you'll mark it as a refusal, and then that'll flag it for us to have one of the inspectors reach out to that farm.
Okay.
Take it from there.
And survey period, this goes until October, if I remember right.
Correct.
Okay. Is that the end or beginning of October?
I believe it's October 30th. I haven't looked at the contract in a while, but if it's anything different, I will update you.
Okay. And that is something that we will get out on the website, onto the survey calendar. Let's see, another voluntary question. Looks like
Dean,
start
sorry,
date in
I was able to pull up the contract. It is October 31st.
October 31st.
Yeah.
Okay. So October 31st will be the end of the survey. We will get that out on the calendar. And start date is as soon as we can get the website up and running and the list out to everybody. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm hoping first thing next week.
Okay.
I'll
So
be
we'll
sending
plan a
it.
target start date of next week. And then a reminder for everybody, this is intended to not be a priority. I mean, it's intended to get worked on, but to kind of float in the background with other work that's going on. So there'll be other surveys constantly coming along. Those will have the priority, but this is, intended to be kind of filler time in all the downtime periods we have. So that'll be kind of the priority list on this. Just though, make sure that it is getting worked on, and coaches and managers, of course, will be monitoring as such. And will y'all be able to provide us, say, with maybe a bi-weekly status report?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we did last year. Is I provided that uh, to uh, to the USDA. So that'll be Ben this year. So I'll send that to Ben, and I'll also include you on those emails, Gene.
Okay. And then we have another question of how many can we expect to be on our list every month?
So the initial farm lists I'll send out will be 100 farms, and then just work through those as you can. And as you get close to the end of your farm list, just reach out and I will issue you a new farm list.
Okay. Do you want them to reach out to me and kind of consolidate, or do you want them to reach out to you directly?
Um, However you guys want to handle that internally is fine. If you are okay with them reaching out to me directly, that's fine with me.
Okay. I think for the time being, I'm going to want the enumerators to reach out to their managers, to kind of that way the managers can also be kind of aware of where everybody's at and what's going on. Will time be entered into iSolved or another site? No, time will be entered into iSolved just like any other survey that we do. You won't have to operate a separate payroll system, and we will get the project code entered.
765.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Ben?
765.
Okay, the project code is 765. And is that what we want to charge this training to, Ben?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Um, and then there's question, manager or coaches to reach out to. The enumerators, I mean, should be talking to their coaches as well. I'll kind of leave it up to each group, but I want to make sure the coaches and managers are within the loop on requesting more work. How each group chooses to handle that, I will leave that to manager and coach discretion. So that gets us through all the questions that I'm aware of. If I missed any, please put your question back in and we'll get it covered. But I think that has us up to date on questions.
All right, thanks, Gene. I still have the call script to go over. Um, we won't go over every single question since we have already done that, but I'll share it just so we can get familiar with it. So here's our call script. It is intended to be read verbatim to the farm. In it, we have what question in the questionnaire the question you're asking is referring to. It's got an explanation of what you need to record so that we know how to attribute the entry to you and to the farm. And then we have some branching questions to help you get to the correct person. You'll ask if they're familiar with the food safety rule, produce safety rule, if they're the person that's most responsible for food safety, and this will run you through how to deal with that. And then we'll go through the contact information. And then this also has our branching of that is also on the form that'll help guide us through. Uh, then we'll, if they're not doing any covered activities, we'll ask them why again. And then here is that list of rarely consumed raw commodities. Again, you'll go through that every commodity with them. And then here's where we've designed this to kind of flow so we're not prompting the commodities question. So we're not prompting them to answer, yes, I only have these rarely consumed raw commodities. We don't really want to let them know that's if they're only producing these that they're not covered, because that may prompt them to answer no to do they have any other produce commodities. So we'll ask, yeah, I have 3 different groups of commodities to ask you about. You'll ask them about those enforcement discretion commodities first, then the rarely consumed raw commodities, and then about the covered commodities. Then farm size, direct consumer sales, and then processing exemption. Yeah, this is where you might get a lot of questions again, as it is probably the most difficult question. And, you know, again, if they do claim this processing exemption, make sure that you let them know that they should be expecting a call from a produce safety inspector to follow up with them about that. And then again, we'll ask them if they're interested in that on-farm readiness review, and ask them about grower training. And then that's it.
I got 3 more questions if I can jump in.
Yeah, absolutely.
One is, could we get a PDF document of just the call script by itself so they could print it?
Yes, all of these documents are all PDFs, separate PDFs.
Okay. And then we had a question wanting to know if the operation requests the report to be emailed to them to complete it. Is that a possibility?
If they are requesting an email, I think the way we should probably handle that is I can provide you guys the link to our online farmer questionnaire that is tailored to having the farm answer those questions on their own, and then you can provide that to them.
Okay.
And it's a very simple link. I'll actually I'll find somewhere to add it.
Yeah, if we can just drop it kind of on that 1-page cheat sheet that we were talking about having, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll put it on the instruction sheet.
And then we had a question, if enumerators are not available until mid-April, can they start later? And the answer is yes. It's, there's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. It's just, we know that there's going to be, especially March, there's going to be a real busy time for the first couple of weeks. And for some folks, they're really busy until the arms three and the seep end. So there's going to be a rolling start period of when everybody kind of gets up and going. Um, it's just if the person is available and they don't have other work that's a higher priority, next week they are available to start. But if somebody has, work that's a higher priority, then they may not be starting until mid-April. Heck, could even be May. That's kind of the nice thing about this particular survey is it has a whole lot of flexibility and it has a very long data collection. It's just, once we get to about the halfway mark, we are going to have to be looking at work and what's still out there. And, there could be work that has to be moved at that point, but it is meant to be flexible and work with everybody's schedules.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the way it went last year is there, uh, we had a few big pushes and some lulls when you guys got busy with other projects. And that is completely fine. It works with us. Because this data has to go through analysis and then move on to our inspectors. Um,
All right, thanks. We're caught up on questions again.
all right. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our agenda. Uh, there's any uh, other questions? Um, if there are not, we can go ahead and sign off a little early. I know that we were gonna leave a little time here at the end if the coaches and managers had any questions that they wanted uh, to stick around and ask that weren't pertinent to the enumerators. We could do that.
We had one question. Somebody requested you go back one screen.
Which screen was that? This?
Was that it, Pam?
Or was it the other way? Yeah, Pam, if you could let us know, this is the one you were looking for. And again, this entire slide deck will be provided um, as well as the recording of this. So you can always come back to it if you need to.
Okay. All right. Well, does anybody have any questions? This is our kind of last opportunity.
All right. Well, no other questions. Well, thank you everybody for coming and showing up and oh, we have one more
We,
question coming in.
yeah, can enumerators be added or removed from this workload? Removed, yes. I mean, if somebody at some point says they would not like to do this, that's perfectly fine. Adding, that'll be a little probably more something that'll get discussed between myself and the manager and coach. Um, Bringing somebody in partway through a project always has certain issues that can arise. I won't say no, but it won't be a blanket yes either.
Yeah, I know last year we did end up adding some enumerators partway through, but that was, I think the structure was a little different last year, right?
Yeah, there was a lot. Well, NAS was fully staffed at that time, and NASDA was structured 100% different. Everything kind of got upended in the last 9 months.
Gotcha. All
All
right.
right. Well, I guess in that case, we will call this a wrap. Thank you for the training. It was really good. I appreciate it. And we will be getting materials out soon. We will target start getting stuff up by the end of the week. And all the bins, I'll be in touch with y'all, and we'll work on figuring out the easiest way to get these materials up and go from there. So once again, thank you everybody. And I will be letting folks know when this recording is posted to our website. And I am going to stop the recording at this point and tell everybody goodbye.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you all.